Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for being here today. I'm Sav.
And I'm Jess, and welcome to And a Diet Soda, episode 27, Being a Boss Babe.
Hey, welcome to your local fast food chain. Can I take your order?
Yeah, can I get a double cheeseburger, large fries, some tots, and I guess a diet soda?
Hi, it's Sav and Jess. Welcome to And a Diet Soda, an opportunity for people to celebrate their successes, share their failures, and hopefully give a little advice on all things relatable along the way.
This community is for appreciating the little things and fostering positive mindsets and intuitive thoughts by talking to people, because chances are they've been through it too.
Today's guest has one hell of a CV and an even cooler story about her path thus far to her dream career and what she's planning next. So today we'll be talking about her nonlinear path to success, which is one of Sav and I's favorite topics. So something that we can all relate to. So we're really excited about that.
Yeah, so Maddie is originally from Christchurch. Is that how you say it?
Yep.
Christchurch, New Zealand, and was the first Maori.
Moldy, but yes, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
That,
Okay.
that was a good try.
Okay. The first student in history to receive an undergraduate degree from Harvard University. She received her bachelor's degree in neuroscience, global health, health policy, as well as completing the pre-medical requirements, everything she needed to do to get into medical school. Before attending Harvard, Maddie contracted meningitis and encephalitis, which left her in the hospital for weeks. Then during her first year, she was also diagnosed with celiac disease.
Yeah, been one hell of a ride. She also participated in so many extracurricular activities, including being co-founder and co-president of Women in Harvard Athletics, co-president of the Student Athlete Advisory Committee, and president of the Athlete Medical Membership Program. So that is a whole bunch of presidents and advisings and all the really amazing leadership positions. We can't wait to hear all about that too. And for all of her service, she was even awarded the Mary G. Paget Prize. Is that how you pronounce that award? Yes. And that was for her significant contributions to women's athletics during her time at Harvard. And as of now, she is working at as a clinical research coordinator in the orthopedic surgery department at Boston Children's. So she also has plans to go to medical school in the US in 2023. Welcome, Maddie. We can't wait to hear your story on all the amazing things we just listed off.
Oh, you guys are the best. Thank you so much for having me. This is awesome. Obviously, we follow each other's podcasts, and I'm super excited to contribute to yours. I think your mission is awesome, and you guys give the best intro. So yeah, I'm Maddie. I am still currently living in Boston, and Sav and Jess did an amazing job at introducing me. And yeah, I'm just really excited to share my story and hope it helps someone in the future.
We absolutely think it will. So we're just going to dive right in. We want to learn everything about this. So after a quick little Google search, we found that in 2021, 22.8% of Harvard's freshman class was first generation. So we know that that's also your experience. We just wanted to kind of dive in and learn a little bit about what your experience as a first generation international student looked like.
Yeah, definitely. So it was a crazy whirlwind experience coming to Harvard, I guess, as a first generation student. My mom finished high school, but my dad didn't even finish high school. So neither of them went to college, and they grew up in New Zealand and traveled a little bit, but are still based back there now. So I went to a rural elementary school where there was about 25 students at my elementary school from grade 0 to 6. So it was like very, very small. I was the only girl in my grade. And so it was, very different transition. And then I went to high school and then I moved in to go to boarding school. And in my senior year of high school, I was like, wow, it'd be really cool to keep playing field hockey, which is the sport that I was playing at the time. And I also maybe want to try go to America for college. And so this whole process of trying to get into American college and maybe play field hockey was kind of the goal for my senior year. I was super behind on everything, because I had no idea what I was doing. Obviously, my parents didn't go to college. So it was really, they had no idea what an application was, or like a university, especially here in the US with the common application. So when I got into Harvard, it was kind of like crazy, like an absolute dream come true. And also just couldn't believe it. A lot of people in my small hometown were like, what is going on? Like, this can't be possible. But so, yeah, it was kind of a huge transition. You kind of mentioned in the intro, I had meningitis and encephalitis before coming to Harvard. So that's kind of an added layer, which made it a little bit more challenging during my first year. But yeah, as a first generation student, it was really tough because not only did I have to like move myself in without my parents every semester, people coming to my games and like having family members there to support. I didn't really have that. And then also, some parents would come up for a weekend and like take their children out for dinner and like buy them new like bedding and stuff they need for their dorm and stuff. So I did miss out a little bit on that. In terms of obviously being an international student, it was a little bit more difficult for my parents to be there as often as they would have liked. And then I guess the first generation aspect, you read off the stat, 22% or something of the first year class right now is first generation. I think that's awesome. But it's only still a quarter, and there is kind of a disparity that I noticed while I was there, of just, access to things. A lot of first generation students will get jobs while they're on campus, which adds an extra layer of complexity to, you're trying to be a student athlete and you're also trying to be a pre-med student. And then you're also trying to make money so that you can like buy food on the weekends. And so I think that's kind of a little bit of an insight into what it was like. It was a lot of juggling different hats, because you have to fit into who you are as a pre-med and that identity, and like who you are as a student athlete and that identity. And then you have this whole other thing of like, oh, I have to worry about finances and student loans and financial aid all in the background. So I would say it's not an uncommon experience. Like, as you mentioned, there are a good amount of people who probably have a very similar one. It was just a little bit more challenging for me being halfway around the world, and then also struggling with illness and, all those different things, which we can dive right into a little bit later. But yeah, I'd say as a first generation international student, it's definitely not an uncommon experience, but there are a lot of complexities that go along with it.
Yeah, I just like every time you say Harvard, I'm like, you're like so casual. And I'm like, that's just such a huge accomplishment to even like get there. So I hope that you do feel proud of yourself every single day for like all of your accomplishments. But thank you for sharing that with us. But I really want to hear about the encephalitis and meningitis. Like, how the heck does that happen to you? How did you get past it? And how did it kind of play a role in that like non-traditional path to where you ended up?
Yeah, absolutely. So in my senior year, I was obviously looking at US colleges, and the process was kind of a little different. Being international, I couldn't come over and do like field hockey camps like most student athletes would do. I was more just like sending over videos to coaches and talking with them. And then I ended up coming over to the US in September of 2015. So 6 years ago, which is crazy to think now. And I came over and I visited Dartmouth and Harvard and a few other schools, just to kind of get a feel of the school and like what I was looking for. And so I ended up committing to Harvard. And then about 3 or 4 weeks later, maybe not even that long, like a week later, I was in the middle of my international baccalaureate exams, which were like my final end of year exams, which is like an international program. So I'd spent 2 years studying for these exams. I was like right in the middle of them. I just finished English and biology, and I had like chemistry and history and stuff coming up the next week. And I woke up on a Saturday. So we don't have exams Saturday, Sunday. And my next exam was the Tuesday. I woke up on Saturday and I had like these spots on my chest, and I was like, and like on my shoulders. I was like, that's so random. Like, that's the most random thing ever. I called my mom. I was like, what's going on? What do you think this is? She was like, oh, I think it's just like a stress rash. Like, you're probably just so stressed. You've been studying for 2 years. You just got back from America last week, like visiting these schools. So you're probably just really stressed out. And I was like, yeah, you're right, probably. So I go to sleep on Saturday night and I wake up Sunday morning and I'm covered head to toe in red spots. And it turns out that I had contracted chickenpox somewhere. And I was 18. So like chickenpox when you're a little bit older is a little bit more bad. So covered head to toe. My mom actually thought I had them when my sister had them when she was little, because I got a couple of spots, but like never really fully developed them. And so anyway, long story short, I was in boarding school. I got chickenpox. So obviously I had to go home. Very contagious. Don't want everyone else getting them. So my parents came and picked me up. And I was there for Sunday and Monday. And then on Tuesday morning, I woke up and I like really couldn't feel anything from my neck down. And so kind of a crazy story, but I ended up, my aunt took me to the hospital, and then my parents ended up coming, and I had to get a lumbar puncture about 6 or 7 times into my spine. And they confirmed that I had meningitis and encephalitis, and I stayed in the hospital for a while. And then kind of the recovery from that was a long process. So I didn't end up finishing my international baccalaureate exams. I had to take those with the Northern Hemisphere cycle. So you guys usually take your exams in May type of thing at the end of your year. We take ours in November in New Zealand. So I had to switch and study again for the May ones, which weren't as great. But and then just a lot of rehab and recovery to be able to come to Harvard in August of 2016. So like not even a year later to play field hockey. So kind of a crazy transition from, using crutches every day and like learning to do things again. And so it was a very challenging experience, I would say, but also like I learned so much from that. And I didn't know what, obviously, as I mentioned, first generation student, had no idea that you could defer. Like I could have deferred a year and come the next year. That was totally something that I learned I could have done. But because I had no idea of that information, I came to Harvard, definitely wasn't ready to get back into like the swing of academics and full-time sport and, social life and all that sort of stuff. So it was a little challenging. I was also still really recovering. I was sleeping like up to 14 hours a day. So as a college student, that's like impossible to do that. And then also having 3 hours of practice a day and all these other things thrown in there. So that was kind of hard, but I'm here today, which is a positive thing. But yeah, it was tough to go through that process. And then, as you mentioned in the intro as well, during my freshman spring, I developed an allergy to gluten. So I got diagnosed with celiac disease after going undiagnosed for about 4 months. So I had all these symptoms, my hair was falling out, like my bones were super brittle. I was like, had terrible migraines, like all of these really random, awful symptoms. And yeah, I ended up having celiac disease, which they diagnosed after like 4 months of me going to the hospital every other day, like 3 times a week. I'd go to the urgent care at Harvard and be like, something's wrong, like, please help me. And after a little while, they ended up diagnosing that. But yeah, that's kind of the illness story. And I guess that obviously led to me being unable to really focus on my academics. And as a pre-med student, I kind of went in, had no idea of like university level classes or especially Harvard level classes. It's kind of a blur. Everyone's like, oh, it's easy, but it's like they're pretending it's easy, which is not the best thing. So I got not the greatest advice on class choices and didn't do as well. And I think I ended up my freshman year finishing with like a 2.7 GPA, which is fine. It's like a passing grade. It's a C+ or whatever grade that is. But if you're a pre-med and you're relying on your GPA to get into medical school, that's not really what you want. So kind of turned things around my sophomore year and was able to like have an upward trend. But yeah, that first year was super tough. And even the second year, like, was also really challenging. So that's a little bit, if you have more specific questions, let me know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what an amazing thing for you to go through and overcome. I think that that's one of those milestones in your life that you look back on, like anything you face in the future, that's something that you can be like, well, it can't be worse than when I went through my freshman year, moving countries, moving everything that you knew. I mean, the amount of moving parts that went into that story is unbelievable. And the fact that you persevered through different cultures and different everything, really, your entire world shifted 180 degrees. That really speaks to your character and your strength. So that's really impressive to have your physical strength. I mean, that must have had an impact on your mental strength as well. Like how are you feeling emotionally? How was your mental health through all of the diagnoses and then coming to America?
Yeah, that was the tough part. So I was pretty independent from like a young age. I started going to boarding school when I was like 14. So I moved out of home and like went by myself, and I'm the oldest child of two. So like not really a big difference, but I'm super independent and felt like, you know, coming to Harvard, I was like fine and everything. But like looking back, oh my gosh, I should have been seeing someone professionally. I kind of just like, you know, brushed over everything, swept everything under the rug. Like I was definitely probably had anxiety, probably had depression, but just like didn't see anyone about it. And that kind of led me to, we can talk about this a little later as well, but some of the stuff that I did within the organizations, like with wellness and mental health and just like speaking out about it a little more. Because yeah, I had no idea where to turn either. Like Harvard's such a big organization that yes, you can go to the doctor, but like getting the right help that you need is not always like very linear. And just knowing the resources as a freshman is kind of like, you don't really know where to go or who to talk to or whatever. So I think in terms of like my mental health, not great freshman year. I persevered and got through it just with like my teammates were the best. They were so supportive, my coaches and everything. But when I look back on like an individual reflection, I definitely should have been seeing someone professionally and like really working on that aspect. And I always, you know, when I'm talking to younger current field hockey players now, I'm like, you just need to like go and see someone, like no matter, like it's not a bad thing. Like if you just want to talk to someone, especially the international students, like it's actually such a complex environment of like moving away from your family. And then every other weekend, like your friends, their parents are coming and taking them out for dinner and like taking them shopping and buying them these things. And like, that can sometimes be really, really tough on people. And so I think like just being able to talk to someone who has like no judgment on your life is really important. Whether you see them in like a, you know, really professional sort of way or just like as a general chat with them, you know, to check in. I think that's really important. But yeah, I would definitely say mental health, not great freshman year. Took a lot of time during my sophomore year and the summer after my sophomore year to like really work on that myself, which I think that was kind of a turning point for me. Like between my sophomore and junior year, I was doing a lot of like self-reflection, which sounds a little like cheesy, but it's definitely something that helped me. And like at every phase of life, it's something that I try to like really connect with and be like, okay, like where was I a year ago? How was I feeling? What can I do? Like, what do I want to achieve? Like kind of just setting, as you said, like little milestones and like little checkpoints of like, okay, how am I doing? Not just like, oh, what's on my resume, but like, how am I doing in terms of like my friendships and like the growth of myself as a person and like what I'm doing outside of my professional career, like personally, but also like philanthropically as well. So that's kind of how I approach things now. But that definitely was not like something that just happened overnight. Like it took a lot of work and like still takes work now, like definitely not perfect, but like trying to understand things a little bit better, I guess, in like personal life, but also like how can I really focus on my mental health. And like recently, like literally just the last couple of weeks, I've been on my phone so much and it's been so bad for my mental health. And like the other day I was like, okay, got to set a time limit on like everything, just so that I can like really prioritize the things that I'm passionate about and the things that are going to like help me in the future. So yeah, mental health, not great freshman year, but it's definitely a work in progress.
And it is for all of us too. Thank you for sharing that. It's definitely not easy to talk about and like also look back on. And I think I'm sure Jess can totally relate too. She was from out of state. And so it's like just hard to not have those people there around you all the time and to have that support. So I don't know. It's just something that we always try to talk about on the podcast is how to take care of your mental health. And it really is just such a work in progress all the time. But at least if we can be mindful about it, it's the most important. So
yeah, but you know, there's like so much, there's I'm such a strong believer in like you're given your family, your biological family, but the people that you choose to make a part of your family are arguably like the most important people in your life, because you don't get to choose who your siblings are, your parents, and sometimes they're just crappy people, but you get to build those relationships with such caring, amazing people over the years that like, I mean, Colorado, I have a family here too, and it's all my friends. And I'm sure you found that in Boston and with your field hockey team. I'm sure that was like an amazing support system as well. So you find it.
Yeah, definitely. No, a lot of the parents, like the parents of the American players, took us in for Thanksgiving, and like I've been to Vermont for Thanksgiving, and then I've been to Texas with a teammate for spring break, and I've been all over the place. So I definitely found my family here in the US, and it definitely made it 1,000 times better. It was just, it's always nice to have your own family sometimes, but yeah, great. Well, exactly what you said. Like you can kind of choose your family and make that your own. And like, I've definitely found that here in Boston and like in the Northeast. So I'm really happy.
That's awesome. So going back a little bit to your personal medical journey, did that impact your decision to be pre-med, or had you like kind of always wanted to be a doctor? What did that look like, and how did it impact your journey?
Yeah, definitely. So I had always wanted to be sort of in the healthcare field, primarily a doctor, but I wasn't really sure like if I wanted to do surgery or primary care or, maybe be like sports med. I was really not sure, but I knew that that was kind of always the pathway for me since I was honestly pretty young. And so I took biology and chemistry, physics, math, all the things that you need to take to kind of have a good understanding of science and things like that. Because actually in New Zealand, you go straight into 1 year of health sciences, and then you go straight to med school after that. So you could be in medical school at like 18 or 19 years old. So it's kind of interesting how that works. And you have to take chem, biophysics, math, and English in your final 3 years of high school to be able to do that. So that was initially my plan. I was taking all those courses to hopefully go to medical school in New Zealand. But there's only 2 medical schools, one in the South Island and one in the North Island. And I didn't really want to go to either of those places. And so that's kind of one of the deciding factors of, I should look elsewhere. Like maybe I'll look at the UK or the US or maybe even Australia. And so that's kind of one of the reasons I like looked abroad. And yeah, so medicine was kind of always in the background for me. Being pre-med in Harvard was really tough. Organic chemistry classes, balancing that with like going to lab and practice and, all of the above. Anyone who's pre-med listening will know that it's a tough one. But I think like with the illness part of it, it definitely made me want to like investigate that more, because there's so much we still don't know about all these different like illnesses. For example, like how did I develop celiac disease at the age of like 19 after moving to America? And we also had another girl develop celiac disease. She was from Canada at the same time as me on my team. So there's like all these different things. And like, obviously we know that, the genetics is a component, but also environment, but how can we like understand that more? So that kind of led me to that a little bit more. And then I ended up majoring in neuroscience. So the meningitis, encephalitis experience for me really solidified that. I did have a cousin when I was younger, I was about 9 or 10 years old, who passed away from brain cancer. So that kind of sparked my interest in neuroscience when I was like in high school. But then my own personal experience really like solidified, okay, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to like understand a little bit more. So I took my favorite class in my senior spring called Brain Invaders. And we really went into like all of these different organisms or viruses or bacteria that invade your brain, what they do, how they do it. And so that was like kind of full circle for me. It was my last semester at Harvard. I started my time there having meningitis and encephalitis, and I finished my time there learning about it and like all that sort of stuff. So it was a very full circle moment for me, which I thought was really cool. But yeah, I think in terms of like how it led me to a non-traditional pathway as well is I obviously was really sick my freshman fall, freshman spring, and didn't do very well grades wise. And so now here I am, I wouldn't say trying to catch up, but I think because I've kind of worked on the idea that there's no like specific timeline. I always like sophomore year, I freaked out because all of these kids had just come back from their summer between freshman and sophomore year. And they were like, oh, I interned at Mass General, or I like did this like research with my dad's friend who's a surgeon, or like whatever it may be. And I just like went home to New Zealand and like recovered, because I was like done after first year. I was like, I need a 3-month break to like see my friends and hang out and just like relax, because I was absolutely exhausted. Obviously the celiac thing, like getting used to that and like what I couldn't and could eat, because for the first 19 years of my life, I was like, oh yeah, pizza, bread, like let me eat everything. And so it was kind of hard. And then realized that beer and like soy sauce and like all these random things, I actually can't eat. So that was kind of an adjustment period for me. And then coming back sophomore year, I kind of just like freaked out a little bit. Yeah, it was just kind of a tough transition, I guess. And led me to, I guess, this non-traditional pathway of taking a gap year, working in clinical research, hopefully pursuing a master's degree for a year, and then applying to medical school next cycle to start in 2023 is kind of the plan. That could change very quickly. Things have changed a lot recently with, you know, COVID and like where I'm going to live and where I'm going to be, visa stuff as well. After I graduate is kind of another complexity to the whole situation. But yeah, that's kind of the plan, and hopefully it all works out.
That's
yeah,
crazy.
well, the best laid plans, right? But it's good that you have like a very go with the flow attitude about it now. I mean, the comparison between people that we see around us and our like what a lot of people, and sometimes it is, but like competition. But I feel like the second you like start thinking of other people and like your comrades and as people that are competitors with you is just the wrong move. Like it's just going to stress you out. And I don't know, the sooner you realize that everyone's got a different path, the better you'll be.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And I'm blown away by the like whole celiac thing, and probably because obviously I love nutrition, but I have a long line of gluten intolerance and celiac disease in my family. And I actually have friends who are from the US and would go study abroad, and they would have problems with gluten, and they could go, like one friend I know specifically, she was like, I could eat pasta and I could eat bread and I didn't hurt at all. And it truly just blows my mind, because I took a lot of classes on how much the US really processes our food, and it's crazy. That would be a really awful experience to go through, to like come here and be like, wait, I can't eat anything. So kind of goes to show a lot about our food.
So someone was telling me, I forget who it was. I don't know if it was you, Sav, but someone was like, yeah, I have a friend who's a chef, and he's like he's like reworking where he sources his grains from. And he works with this farmer that basically is growing a new like family of grains. And it's like, they're very similar to like what everything used to be before all the GMO stuff. And I'm not even gonna like try to say what I think it is, but basically it was that similar concept where like he can eat these grains and not feel sick. And he's like trying to develop that further. But yeah,
That's
it is really
cool. That's
really
interesting.
cool.
Let him
Yeah.
let him know to let us know.
right. I know. I'm like, I got some clients for you.
Yeah.
But so Maddie, when we talked earlier, you said this great quote that I really want you to elaborate on and talk about, but you said fall 7 times, stand up 8. And I feel like that just totally resonates with you. So can you speak to a little bit about what that means to you and ways to invest in yourself as a person?
Yeah, definitely. It would probably be, one of my favorite quotes. I just feel like, I don't know, there's been so many instances just in, I guess, the last like 5 or 6 years that I've been like, wow, like just in terms of resilience, that quote kind of like screams resilience to me, and something that I like pride myself on in a sense, just in terms of like, I don't know, there's always going to be someone who has a worse situation than you, right? But that also doesn't invalidate like what you're going through. And I think that's super important, because for one thing, like in terms of the meningitis stuff, there have been a lot of people that I've known or friends of friends who have experienced a loved one who has passed away from meningitis or encephalitis. And so that kind of experience, I was like, okay, so that didn't happen to me, so I don't deserve to feel a certain way. And that was the wrong mentality, because that's something I went through. And just because someone went through something different or worse, or however you want to word it, doesn't invalidate like what I had been through, I guess. And so I guess for me, just like all the experiences we've been talking about so far is something that, you know, I got knocked down a little bit and kind of just got back up, kept moving, kept trying to like do things. Like definitely was not easy. It was an absolute grind most of the time to like figure out so many different things. Like when I was dealing with the celiac stuff, like I was having to like get myself to the hospital and like get myself to urgent care in the middle of the night and like all these things. And as I said, like there's so many people who have situations that are so much worse than what I've experienced. But I think that in terms of like situationally, it's kind of, I don't know, that quote just resonates with me. Like you just have to kind of get up and keep going, regardless of what's going on and all of that. Like the more that you, I guess, dwell in like sadness or just like in the situation that you're in, the harder that it's going to be to like get out of that, because, you know, the world keeps moving, the sun will come up tomorrow type of thing. And, you know, I have this kind of rule for myself: if something like really terrible happens, or something that, you know, just throws me off a little bit, I'll give myself 24 hours, like one day to be upset about it. And then the next day it's like, okay, I have to accept this, deal with it somehow, and then like not forget about it and just like black it out, but move on in a way that's going to be productive for the future. And that's kind of, I guess that quote just expresses that, like, you're allowed your one day. It's kind of like how I think about it. And then it's kind of, okay, how do I process this? How can I, you know, move forward into like some sort of growth from this? Because every experience, like regardless if it's like a relationship or a job or friendships or whatever it is, there's always going to be some sort of learning experience from that. Whether it's like someone did something to you or you did something to someone, there's like always some type of learning from it. So that's kind of my, I guess, philosophy behind that quote, is like taking that day, really just like accepting it, and then trying to find the best way possible to like move forward and have that be something that is beneficial to my experience, rather than like keep dwelling on it as a negative. Because yeah, the world keeps moving, everyone keeps, you know, going at their own pace, whatever that may be for everyone. But I think in terms of like yourself, it's not going to be helpful for you to dwell on these negative situations and get into like a rut. And sometimes it is so hard to, like, it's happened to me. That I'm not saying that every time something awful happens, I'm like, oh, 24 hours is up, like, let's be happy. That's totally not the case. It definitely takes a lot of work, and a lot of like self-reflection on, okay, how can I best get through this? Or like, do I need support somehow? Do I need to reach out to friends? Like, how can I pick myself up again in the best way possible? But I would say, like, yeah, it's kind of a work in progress, because, you know, things happen and you can be sad about it for like a week, or something goes is a chronic thing and is happening to you constantly, and you're like, okay, how do I get out of this? But I think taking that 24 hours to just like really think about solutions for yourself, or you know, just ways around things, is kind of the philosophy, I guess, behind that quote. So just getting up and trying to find the best way forward, I guess.
That's great. I think this next question I have for you, you might have just kind of answered and used it as an inspiration, but we wanted to know if you could kind of describe your busy life and your chaotic schedule, and how you're able to keep focused on the end game at all, and like keep that motivation alive.
Yeah. And I have no idea, honestly, if I'm going to be honest with you guys. Someone asked me at work today, they were like, oh, how are you? And I'm like, yeah, I'm okay. Like, I'm going to be honest. It's like, you know, it's a work in progress every day. So right now I'm working as a clinical research coordinator. So at Boston Children's, 40 hours a week. So that's that. also kind of have the podcast. Took a little hiatus the last couple of months just with like life and busyness and like just trying to get settled into, I just moved into a new place and that sort of stuff. So that, and then I'm also taking a Maori language course back home in New Zealand, which is online. So trying to like get back into learning that, speaking that, because that's something I grew up with and kind of lost touch with through high school because I was at boarding school and then obviously through college. So trying to get back into that a little bit. Oh my gosh, I'm trying to think of everything else. So right now I'm actually trying to get home to New Zealand for a few weeks, but we have to join a lottery every week to get a spot in quarantine to go home. So right before this call, actually, I joined the lottery. I got given number 10,732. There's only 2,900 spots. So I was not successful this time. This was the fourth time I've tried as well. So for the last 4 weeks, I've been trying every Monday. So that's also another, I guess, stressor. That's, I haven't been home in 3 years and haven't seen my family for 3 years. So that's another thing, I guess, that's adds into the whole stress of everything. But yeah, I'm okay. I'm okay. And that's kind of what I've been, I guess, working through as well. Like it's important to reach out to people and kind of what you guys said before about like choosing your family. Like I'm so lucky to be around the people that I have like as a support system. I know that for Thanksgiving and Christmas, like I have places to go here in the US. And, for my birthday, I'm celebrating with coworkers who have a birthday like 2 days after me. So I feel very lucky in that regard. But it is also, tough to sometimes not be with, the people you want to be with and be home and see family and friends there as well. But yeah, crazy schedule. Trying to just, live it as best as I can, and also applying to grad school right now and doing all that application stuff is also a lot, but I feel very lucky to be in the position that I am and like be able to have, the chosen family that I do around me.
Oh, that's so cool. I can't believe you haven't been home in so long. I mean, that's to just like enter a lottery and not have that guarantee. I mean, I can't even imagine. So taking a quick break from like what we have been talking about, because I want to hear about like home. I want to hear like what's like the best thing to do in Christchurch? Like what do you miss the most and what do you can't wait to do as soon as you get that lottery ticket?
Yeah. So Christchurch is like the main city, and that's where I went to boarding school. I actually live about 45 minutes away from there in like a really rural town called Darfield. I cannot wait to go back to the bakery there. They do like, we have like meat pies in New Zealand, which like you guys don't have here. Like we have like steak and cheese and chicken. It's kind of like a chicken pot pie, but like a little different. So having one of those, they do gluten-free ones, which is amazing. They do a lot of other gluten-free food. And like, that's one thing I'm really looking forward to just in my small hometown. But also I guess seeing my parents and seeing family and friends and a lot of other really cool things. Like obviously New Zealand, you've got mountains, you've got the beach, you've got all of the, outdoor activities. So also excited to do that because I feel like in Boston, there is a good amount of things to do, but it's not the same as, doing it at home. So looking forward to hopefully when I get a lottery ticket, which is just crazy that that's even a real thing. Hopefully they're opening it up to vaccinated people to be able to self-isolate at home. So right now you have to do a mandatory 2-week quarantine in a facility that's like basically run by the government. And the only way to get into one of those facilities is getting a lottery ticket to get into a facility on the exact day that you like book a flight, and it's this whole thing. And they won't let you get on a flight at like LAX unless you have a ticket to show that you get into quarantine. So yeah, it's very crazy. When I tell people from America, they're like, that can't be real. And I'm like, no, it's a real thing. So yeah, there was about 27,000 people trying to get a ticket for 2,000 spots today. So it's, yeah, every week people are trying, but hopefully one day soon, it'll all work out.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
Well, we're wishing you all the best of luck. I can't even imagine a lot like that truly does blow my mind. I can't even like think about Kind of sounds like the Hunger Games or something. Like it's just like a free for all.
Yeah.
So a little shift. We want to know who's someone that has inspired you the most in your life, or maybe a piece of advice that sticks out to you from someone that you really looked up to that has made you feel confident and motivated.
Yeah, definitely. I think the one piece of advice that has really resonated with me is the part about non-traditional pathways, and just not comparing your story and your journey to anyone else's. And I know it can sometimes be a little disheartening, or just like upsetting, I guess, to be rejected from things, like rejected from programs or rejected from, you know, scholarships or whatever it may be. But I think for me, the thing that I've realized is like I have this one passion that, you know, for healthcare, for medicine, that I don't think is ever going to change. So no matter how long it takes me to get there, like that's what I'm going to do. And I think, yeah, I learned that in my sophomore year, from a really awesome advisor who I'm still very close with today. And he actually works at Boston Children's Hospital. He kind of walked me through and said, like, you know, your journey is unique and like you're going to learn things along the way that no one else is going to learn. And your experience is so just like different and like, as I said, unique, that you bring so much to the table as an individual that no one can compare to that. And that's true for everyone, right? Like everyone has their own experiences. No two people are exactly the same. And so I think that's like really important for like anyone listening, is like you are your own person and like lean into that. Like it's not a bad thing to be different. And I think when I first came to Harvard, especially as a first generation international student, I was like, oh, I have to like fit the mold of like everyone else that goes to like Harvard or whatever. And that was like where I went wrong. I felt like I was disingenuous to like who I am as a person. Instead of like leaning into like the things that make me super unique, I was like trying to fit into this like mold of like, oh, the student athlete who does like neuroscience. Like that was all I was kind of like wanting to show. But yeah, now looking back, like the parts that make me the most me are really important to me and are the ones that, you know, aren't as, you know, standard as everyone else. So I think, yeah, the thing that I would say is just lean into your journey, your experiences, like who you are, what makes you you, because no one else is like you. And although, yeah, you need to have like a GPA or blah, 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 all this stuff for like med school or grad school or whatever it may be. The things that you'll learn along the way, like if you take a different route, you go do a master's or you go do something else, and you might end up where you're actually supposed to be by taking the longer route and learning a little bit more about yourself before you commit to something. So yeah, that would be my advice, is just like your pathway is yours, and lean into the things that make you you, because no one else has them. And I think for whether it's a professional degree or you're already working and you're in a company or whatever it may be, that will be, I guess, equal across the board. Like you just lean into what makes you you, and your strengths will shine through.
That's beautiful advice. Yes, definitely. I love it. That's awesome. So what are some like more specific ways that you take care of yourself, that you kind of preach this, the mental health? And you know, you said it's always a work in progress. So what are those like kind of really tangible ways that someone can always be working on themselves?
Absolutely. So there's a lot of different things. So I recently just started journaling. I was like, that's not for me. Like for the longest time, I'm like, oh, that's not my type of thing. Like I can't imagine myself writing down stuff and like my feelings and like what I'm thinking about and all that sort of stuff, because I'm usually a very like pragmatic, like let's just do this type of person. So I was like, I can't really do all the fluffy stuff. But I started doing it a couple of weeks ago, and it has been the best, like most therapeutic thing ever. Just being able to like lay it all out there. Maybe I'll never read it again, but like just being able to like turn the page after I've written something down and be like, okay, that happened. Like this is good. I'm making some sort of progress in like what I'm thinking about. Also, sometimes think when you're so like stressed and overwhelmed by things, it can be super helpful to just write down, okay, like a bullet point list if you want to, like, why am I stressed? Like, what are the things I have to do? What are the things that I could be doing? What are the things that I need to do? All these different types of thoughts, and kind of just get it on a piece of paper to like look at it and be like, okay, that's not important. That's really important to me. I guess also another thing is writing down for me, like traits that I'm like proud of and things that I'm like, okay, this is what like I want to continue to do every day. So like I am resilient, or like I am optimistic about things, or like just like little like words of, I guess, affirmations in a way. And for me, totally never used to do that until like a couple weeks ago. I saw a TikTok about it and I was like, maybe I'm going to try that and give it a go. And so that's been one thing. Also just like trying to go for a walk. Like if I'm like ever stressed about anything, I'll just try to like put in a podcast or like a playlist that I love, go for a walk. 30 minutes, like doesn't have to be far, or walk down to CVS and like get my favorite drink or like snack or whatever it may be. And just like come back, light a candle, watch Netflix, read a book, like those types of things. I try to take like an hour every day. Now that I'm not in college and playing sport, an hour every day is kind of manageable, to sit down and just do things that like make me happy. And whether that's like walking around Target aimlessly for like an hour and like looking at stuff. I also like live in Boston, so the shopping street, Newbury Street, is like just down the street from me. So sometimes I just go window shopping for like an hour and like walk around. So yeah. So there are some things like that. But I'm gonna be totally honest with you guys. Like the last, I would say like 3 months, I was kind of in a rut with like working out and like doing things to like take care of myself. And then the last like 3 weeks, I was like, okay, I have to get my life together in like some sort of capacity. So I wasn't like really getting in touch with like why I was feeling the way I was feeling, and why I like maybe didn't like something on my job, or like some person did something or whatever it is. I was kind of just ignoring that for about 3 months. And then I was like, okay, this is kind of all built up. I need to do this. So I'm not saying I'm like this perfect saint who like does yoga and like drinks tea every day or whatever, but I definitely try to do things at least once a day that like help me like reset a little bit. It's also nice to have a little bit of a walk to work, to catch the train. And I just put on like a podcast and listen to that, and just, try to zone out for a little bit. And those are some of the, I guess, tangible things. And also I've been trying to drink 2 of these bottles of water every single day. So that's also another, like, set myself a goal. I was like, okay, 2 bottles a day, and try like just get back into a routine. Because I moved September, but I also had to like pack up stuff, and it was this crazy couple months. So trying to get back into doing things that make me happy, I guess.
Well, we appreciate the honesty, because I also think, well, I can just relate. For the past couple months, I've kind of been on the same exact thing. I mean, I think in some situations it's part of the healing journey as well. You kind of have to go through it sometimes, but there also has to be a time where you're like, okay, it's really time now to reflect inward and look at the real problems. But we also can't always pretend like yoga is going to solve everything. So we just appreciate the honesty, because it's real. It's way more real than honestly being continuously in tune with yourself. So well, our last question for you is, we just want to hear a little bit about your podcast. We know you kind of took a break from it and you have a lot going on, but kind of just tell us why you started the podcast. What was your motivation behind that, and why that was something you actually wanted to do and share with others?
Yeah. So the podcast has taken a little bit of a hiatus, as I mentioned. I started it because I, as a first generation student, especially in the US, wanting to do pre-med, I had all these friends in my pre-med classes who both of their parents were surgeons, or, their dad was on the admissions committee at some medical school, or their uncle was like some esteemed like doctor. And I was like, my parents didn't even go to college, and I don't know anyone in the US that is a doctor or a surgeon or even like literally nothing. I had no connection to healthcare professionals in the US. And as I moved through my freshman and sophomore year, I realized, like, in terms of internships and just advice on the pre-med pathway and like what you're really getting into, I had no idea what I was getting into. And honestly, now I still find out things about like medical school or residency. I'm like, oh, wow, that's what I'm applying to do soon. So I started the podcast because I had talked to a lot of people in my pre-med classes, but also outside of like pre-med, like in the community, who were in a similar situation to me. They didn't really have a family member or a friend or a neighbor to go to and be like, please tell me what medical school is like, or please tell me what the pathway is really like. Because I think it is kind of secretive. And then all of a sudden, all this stuff happens and you're in medical school, and then all this stuff happens and you're in residency. And it's kind of like, what is all that stuff? Because no one really knows. And so I started the podcast because I just wanted to give people information. I wanted to talk to people who had interesting stories or unique pathways and just like allow them to share their story on a platform so that people who may resonate with their story can kind of understand how they got to where they were. I think, yeah, I just wanted to give people similar to me a chance to learn more about this non-traditional pathway. So I've interviewed people who are currently in medical school. I've interviewed pre-meds. I've interviewed current like attendings who have been through residency, been through fellowship. They've done it all. Now they're fully practicing. So it's just kind of giving people an idea of like, you can do it if you really want to. There is this pathway. It may be a little bit more challenging. You may hit a few more road bumps, but it is possible. And these are the people that have done it, and this is their advice, type of thing. Just because I was so lost, even like a year ago, I was still super lost, and I was lucky enough to be connected with some amazing people who kind of showed me the pathway and showed me as an international student, like, this is how you do it. These are the schools you can apply to. All this information that I would have had no idea about had I not met these people. So I think like, yeah, that was basically the reason I wanted to make sure that, other people in my position had this information and that they were able to, I guess, go to medical school if they wanted to, or go into healthcare, or become a nurse or a PA or whatever they wanted to do, that they had access to information that was going to be able to help them. And also role models. I think, all the people that I've talked to, they're amazing. And I still keep in contact with all of them, just about their pathway. And they give me advice in terms of like a career aspect. And just, even if, only one person listens to it, I know that they would have gotten something out of that conversation that I've had with them. And yeah, I'm just continuing on, scheduling guests for the upcoming season. I've got 3 more episodes to publish for this season. And then just continuing with that. I love talking with people. It's awesome to hear other people's stories, where they've come from, whether they come from Tanzania or they come from New Mexico, and whatever stage they are in this like healthcare process. It's always been fun to connect with people and be able to share their stories, because hopefully someone can learn something from their experiences.
Your podcast kind of reminds me of this YouTube channel, and it's this dad that just does like random household stuff, or he'll be like, this is how you check your oil, for like people that don't have people in their lives that can teach them that. And he's like, just come on over, I'll teach you how to unclog a toilet. Like, I feel like that's what you're doing, is like just the basics, and like, come to mama if you don't know what you're doing. Like, I'll hold your hand.
Yeah. And that's what I just like didn't have. I was like, how is this not a thing that people have? And you know what I mean? And I felt like I was super left out in terms of like, I was the only one in my family who didn't have a, doctor or a healthcare professional or whatever it was. But then as I started talking to people in like my pre-med community or like outside of that, I realized that I wasn't the only one, and that there needed to be some sort of platform that people could learn from and people could engage with. And also having the people on my podcast share their stories about like, okay, what to do, what not to do. I did this, it didn't work, how you can not screw up like I did, type of thing. Because just sharing that information so that, first generation international students. I guess people of color is another community that I'm really trying to emphasize in these conversations in terms of there is obviously some sort of stereotypes around, white male physicians, and that's still the case here in the US, and trying to like broaden the horizons and learn about, different medical schools. I just interviewed someone who actually attended medical school in the Caribbean. I've talked to people who went to Stanford and like Iowa and all over the place. So I think it's super important to have that diversity aspect too. Because, if you don't see people in your community doing these things, then you think it's impossible almost. You think like, oh, I can't do that because there's no one that looks like me or is from my community that is doing that. But hopefully by a little bit of light and awareness to these people's stories, that will help someone in the future.
Definitely. Yes, absolutely. So we are going to lead into our weekly challenge now. We'd love to have you announce it whenever you're ready.
Yeah, absolutely. So the weekly challenge for this week is to sit down and read 10 pages of a book, whatever book you're reading at the time, and just get through that. I've been doing that actually for the last month. It's been amazing. I've been through 3 books already, which is kind of crazy. Sometimes I read a little bit more than 10, but like definitely 10. Except on the weekends, I kind of like catch up on a Sunday afternoon sometimes. But yeah, no, definitely try to do that if you want. It's been really awesome to get back into reading a little more just for my own like passion instead of having to do it for school, and trying to stay off my phone a little bit more and, get connected. I've been reading this book called The Defining Decade. I'm not sure if you guys have read it. Highly recommend, and also Mindset. So those are 2 of my favorite books that I absolutely love. And if any of the listeners want to read those, they're super great and would highly recommend.
I've heard of The Defining Decade before. I've had a lot of people tell me I need to read that book, and I just need to get it already and read it. I've also heard Atomic Habits is a really good book. So I'm like, I need to get on.
Great recommendations.
Yeah.
I have to check them out.
I know. But Maddie,
I'm more into like the Nicholas Sparks, like
it's really
flicky, something romantic.
It's about what you enjoy, really. So Maddie, it's been such a pleasure getting to know you over this last hour. Thank you so much for being so open and honest. We know it can be challenging, but we really appreciate you sharing your experiences and your stories with us.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, guys. This was so fun. I hope that, I was able to help in some way. I think, the last thing I just want to say is like, just be you. I know that as cliche as that sounds, it's like actually what I've learned in the last like 4 years is like, it's super important, especially just for like your next phase of life, by defining yourself and like being able to like make your decisions and see where you go and all of that. So yeah. Thank you guys for having me. This was amazing.
Beautiful advice. Yes. Love it so much. You guys can find Maddie on Instagram. Definitely go check her out. Her personal page is Maddie, MADDIE _Earle, EARLE. And then her podcast page, which you guys should definitely go check out as well, is at more_than_un_MD. Mouthful, but we'll put it in the show notes. As you guys know, to become a part of our family and community, join us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube at And a Diet Soda. We air every Thursday, so thanks again, and we will see everybody next week.
Thanks for listening. We hope you were able to give yourself a little love today. You deserve it.
Be sure to subscribe to this podcast and check us out on social media for weekly conversations and attainable challenges for your health.